Hello fellow nerdmaids and nerdmaids-to-be, my name is Faith and today I'm going to be reviewing my tail by Mermaid Inc. Mermaid Inc. is a company based out of Indonesia that's been making tails since about 2016. The big draw for me for these tails is that they make it for my love, the Mahina monofin in quite a variety of neat styles, and as well they also make them for the outdated Finis Aquarius monofin if anyone still happens to have that one. But because of the high shipping cost, very few people in North America have these tails. In fact, I've only ever seen one in person. Then they reached out to me a while ago and I'm super stoked to be able to do a review. And just a quick side note, these tails are heavily discounted up until the end of the year because 2020 needs a bit of fun in it. So if you're interested in getting one of these, they're on sale right now. I would highly recommend you go check it out. Anyways, with all that said, I will be reviewing this on cosmetics, comfort, durability, customer service, and performance. So here we go! So for the cosmetics, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. So when we first started talking, they hadn't even published the designs on their website yet. So I just saw a few screenshots of their design files and thought, out of all my tails, I don't have a red one. Something super cool that speaks to my galactic mermaid heart is that these are all based off of different planets. And this one is the Mars style. But stay tuned in this video to see what I named the tail based on your suggestions. When I unboxed this, I was actually surprised at how much contrast was on the scales, as well as a little bit of texture. There's little dots here, and the scales have a decent amount of detailing. One thing I have noticed when looking at this up close though is that some of the designs of the scales actually like go over the lines and into other scales, which I thought was a little bit of a design oversight. I also like the fact that this has got a lighter red underbelly and a darker red top half, but there's still a few accent scales here that are like a speckled color, which gives it just a nice bit of realism and texture. I would say that the scales look a little bit cartoony almost, just with the way that they're outlined. Now, one thing that I've always been kind of not a fan of about these tails is that they have a seam in between the body of the tail and the fluke of the tail. It's not as big of a deal as I thought. I really can't tell where the seam is, and I used my sister as my normal person eyes and she didn't even know where it was. It took her a while to find it. Speaking of seams, the side seams are really nice. The scales don't line up, but because of the way that they've got the darker color on the side, it's hard to tell where the seam actually is. Now, as for the fluke, I would have liked a little bit more detail on it. Just maybe like some stronger lines, but I do really like the way that this white kind of has a nice highlight, and this tail seems to practically glow underwater when the light is reflected off of it. And we've got some darker ends on the fluke tips here, and of course the main design feature of this tail are the crazy cool tendrils. They've got quite a number of them. It's super flamey and cool, but it does lead to some problems, which I will talk about later on. With the vinyl and without the vinyl, it does have this really cool striking flow underwater, and I look so long when I wear this, and as a short person you know how much I love being taller with a tail on. Speaking of being long, this tail is quite a bit too long on me. It actually goes like all the way up to here. Well, some might see that as a pro. I don't. Yeah, no, this really isn't working out for me. And so I've had to roll this down a couple times, which leads to a bit of awkward waist issues. It looks a little bit lumpy on me, which is unfortunate that I didn't fit very well into their pre-made small size. The waistband isn't an elastic, it's just a folded over yoga style waistband. What I like about this fabric is that it's not very see-through at all. Really the only thing where you can see through it is because it's just a little bit big on me, it tends to kind of gap and cling towards me in weird areas so you can see my knees and stuff through the tail. Now, in terms of the tendrils and the vinyl and the fluke, I have some thoughts. The vinyl is really thin. It doesn't really support it if you're trying to hit it over your head for a fluke shot. The fluke tips are still going to drape down. They're not going to stand straight up. And it's about the same, honestly, as when you don't have the vinyl in. Now, also, when I have the vinyl in, you can see all these fold lines on the tail. And when I'm swimming, it just doesn't look that seamless. It looks a little lumpy and weird, and then also when I'm swimming in this, it actually makes the fluke look thicker than it should be because there's water trapped inside the vinyl that can't get out. Without the vinyl, obviously these tendrils look a little bit sadder and saggier. Sometimes will tangle up in the water, but I honestly prefer it. I'm gonna talk more about the vinyl because I've got a number of issues with it. Alright, so comfort, I'm giving this tail a 9 out of 10. The two things that are uncomfortable about this tail would be the Mahina and then just kind of getting the vinyl in, and sometimes it'll rub against your feet if you're not wearing socks. It kind of depends on where you situate the monofin. In terms of the fabric is so soft. It almost feels like a sweatpant material. Oh wow, this fabric is It's not as thick as a Shot Vancouver Mermaid. It doesn't quite have that like thick and sort of squishy thing that a Shot Vancouver Mermaid or a Mertailor would have. This seems a little bit thinner, but it's still a really good quality spandex. It's got a good bit of stretch, and it's not itchy. It's really soft. I love that. Even after a couple swims, it's still quite nice to feel on your skin. Durability, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. This tail has actually held up a lot better than I thought it would. The one thing that has kind of happened to this, which I noticed even on the first swim, is that there's rubbing on the tendril areas, especially you can see it on this darker color here. On the white, obviously you can't see it as much. The white of the fabric is showing through. There's some pilling and rubbing on the fluke tips of the tail. Some of the threads are pulled, but it's not anything crazy that I'd be like super concerned about. This just happens with tails. As well, there are a few areas too here on the fluke where I have noticed a bit of strain, but no pop seams yet. You can see it's just a little bit worn there, and of course that's from shoving the vinyl in and out of all these little tendrils. The sewing on this tail is immaculate. It is so good. The seams have held up incredibly, even around the zipper. The zipper is not a crazy heavy duty zipper. It's still just a regular dress zipper, but I'm able to use it without much issue. And even when I'm shoving the vinyl and the monofin in and out, I'm not too concerned about the zipper popping out. So the vinyl is sewn together, which was a choice. And so in some of these areas, the vinyl is actually coming apart, but I'm not so sad about that. One, because I hate the vinyl and I don't actually use it. The vinyl needs drainage! You're putting essentially a bucket at the bottom of my tail to collect water and just keep it there. For customer service, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It was a bit of a weird circumstance of how I got this tail, so I don't know if I got the full Mermaid Inc experience, but it essentially just came in a little bag. So there wasn't anything super unique along with the tail. There wasn't any sort of care sheet or anything like that, which, you know, isn't a requirement, but it is a little bit nicer. Their website looks super cool. I always like checking it out. And as well, I love that their Instagram features lots of different customers wearing their tails, which looks super fun and makes you really want to join in on the mermaid community. What's really great is the fact that there is a tail maker that is more accessible for Asian markets. I love seeing different mermaids, especially in Singapore and the Philippines and Indonesia, wearing all their tails. It's really cool, and I hope I can get the word out to more people that might be like, it's really expensive to ship a tail from America to wherever I am in the world. But on the other hand, for people on my side of the pond, these tails aren't as accessible because you look at it and be like, oh, that's a lot of money for a tail and for shipping. Yeah, you know what? And this company has really upped their game in the last couple years, and I'm really excited to see what else they do for tails with the Mahina. Another thing that I thought was super cute about this tail is that they have a tag. It says wash with fresh water after mermaiding, do not tumble dry, do not bleach, do not make deal with sea witch for legs, which is super funny.
Why you doing?
Yeah, I'm like a reverse Ariel, because like Ariel's a mermaid who wishes she was a human, and I'm like a human who wishes she was a mermaid.
Okay, I was so like Melody from The Little Mermaid 2, Ariel's daughter.
No, I'm Ariel, but reverse.
Okay, but Melody is Ariel's daughter, and she wanted to live under the sea, so you're kind of like Melody.
But I'm like Ariel, because like I'm like the biggest fan of The Little Mermaid. Okay, I like grew up watching it, and I like always like identified with Ariel and wanted to be here. And then I realized one day, I was like, wait, I'm like Ariel, but reverse.
So you're a human that wants to be a mermaid.
Yeah, I'm a human who wants to be a mermaid.
Speaking of which, that's what I decided to name this tail. I thought that I would want to name it something fiery like Eternal Flame or Phoenix, but when swimming in this tail and rewatching The Little Mermaid 2, which is not a good movie, I just feel like Melody suits this tail really well. She's a little bit awkward, but you know, still beautiful and enchanting underwater. Thank you to everybody who suggested Melody as a name. For sizing, they only offer 3 pre-made options, and I was a little bit too small for their small option, but they do offer custom sizing, which is not just for their custom tails, which by the way is a feature that is really cool. So I kind of wish that I'd gotten the custom sizing option. I gave them my measurements and I said, oh, here's my measurements in inches. Oh shoot, here they are in centimeters, and they're like, you'll fit into the small. Well, it did, with room to spare. Just know that these tails do have a bit of stretch to them. It's always better with stretchy tails to size down instead of up. Time for performance. We're gonna give this tail a 6.5 out of 10. The main issue is this stuff. Apparently this stuff is called perspex, but that's a hard word to say, and you guys know what I mean when I say vinyl. You know, this crap. This is by far the worst vinyl I've ever gotten. You know how I said vinyl is like an unholy monster of saran wrap? This is essentially saran wrap.
Sealed for freshness.
It's like barely 2 millimeters thick, which is good because that means I can actually get it inside all the little crooks and crannies of this tail, but it's bad because it does nothing! Just gets stuck to itself and crinkles and just folds and is terrible. Like I said before, so the vinyl is sewn together. None of my other vinyl sheets are sewn together. It is a barrier that stops drainage from happening. Now, you might be wondering, well, does this tail have drainage holes? And this tail does not, but that's okay. It's a fabric that has little holes in it. However, when you stop something from the water draining out, then you're gonna have an issue, like I do. It just fills up with water.
I'll show you how much water I have left in it. That's a hefty amount.
Putting the Mahina inside the vinyl, inside of fabric, is also a gigantic pain in the tushy. It took me like several minutes just to even get the vinyl in, and then to put the Mahina in was super confusing because I didn't have an assembly instruction. I actually had to DM them. So it is supposed to go into the long tendril area. So the longest tendril is where the fluke tips of your Mahina are supposed to somehow wedge inside. Does this look like something that is enjoyable to swim in? No. Now here's what they've written on their website about the vinyl/perspex. The perspex flukes insert is designed to support the new fluke design and can be removable. Insert your monofin between the two layers. It is heavy and does not collect water to ensure sleekness when swimming. That was not my experience. Assembling tip. Leave the perspex insert inside the skin and insert your monofin. Due to being folded for shipping, please flatten the entire tail and perspex insert so the fluke fins are straightened out. So maybe what I should have done is left it inside and then flattened it out, but even so, trying to put the Mahina inside the tail, it'll still cause like weird folds and ruptures, and then the vinyl is not secure in any way once you're inside the tail. Like the fluke shape doesn't really hold it shut. So this area just will flap open and around as much as the tail skin will allow, so you're still gonna get weird bunches underneath your fabric. I don't like it! It stops me from performing effectively. And when I don't wear the vinyl inside the tail, yes, the tail has drag. The tail has drag because there's excess fabric. But you know what? It's not drag of I'm dragging a bucket behind me. It's drag of I'm dragging a piece of fabric behind me. And sure, the vinyl might help it look a little bit better in photos, like not as quite as sad and floppy, but even so, it's still really, really thin and just kind of makes them look awkward. They all sort of have their own idea of where they want to go because the vinyl does not want to stay just nice and flat and flush. Now, what I do like about this tail is that it uses the Mahina, which is an awesome fin and kind of works with vinyl. And in fact, I love the Mahina inside this tail so much I didn't even bother to try any other fins with it. If I wanted to see if I could make the vinyl work, I would maybe put the shooter inside of this, but I know that the vinyl doesn't work at all. So why bother with a better monofin when I could just take it out and not swim with it and just use the Mahina? Guys, and after 35 tails, I think that I should have a good idea on how mermaid tails are supposed to work. Good thing though is that the zipper has held up really well. It's a really easy zipper to use and doesn't get stuck and doesn't pull out. Like it's so much easier just to put the Mahina inside this tail. This is what the tail looks like with the Mahina inside. This doesn't look bad to me. Like, again, the fluke tips are a little floppy, but the Mahina fills out the majority of the big large one, and then the other ones just kind of do their thing. Without the vinyl, the tendrils on the tail maybe don't stick out as much as with the vinyl. If I don't use it, this is a tail that I would actually choose to use. With it, it's a tail that I am not going to touch with a 10-foot pole. Every time since my first swim, I've swam in the vinyl for testing purposes for about 3 to 5 minutes and then been like, nope.
Why? Just why?
But even without the vinyl, this is still a tail for more advanced swimmers because the Mahina is a little bit trickier to use and get used to. The drag with these is a little bit harder, but this tail is still very safe to get out of. Again, I can get out of this tail in about 3 to 5 seconds. Alright, so the total score for this review is 40.5 out of 50. That's an 81%, that's a B. I'd say that's an accurate grade for this tail. Mermaid Inc. has come a long way in terms of their design. However, I think that there's still a few kinks to work out in terms of using vinyl effectively inside their tails. But these Sea Titan tails are still really fun to use without the vinyl. With the vinyl, probably gonna work better for photos. And I just really love finally having a red tail, and Melody is one that I really enjoy swimming in. It's so nice to have another tail in my collection for the Mahina monofin. So if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, give it a thumbs up. Comment below any thoughts you have on the Mermaid Inc. tails or any things that you want me to review in the future, and I'll do my best. Subscribe if you haven't already to see more of my face and more fun mermaidy content. As well, I've put out a lot of videos this summer swimming in this tail, swimming in different tails, doing tricks, working with finfolk tails. If you want more mermaidy content and want to learn more about mermaiding from me, you can check out my channel. I've got a ton of different videos. Thank you guys once again for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!
No.